Miranda, a young woman with bright brown eyes and long chestnut hair that she always gathered into a neat ponytail so it wouldn't get in the way at work, sat at the kitchen table, feeling the tension in the air growing thicker. She was the chief accountant at a small firm in the suburbs of Chicago, where she was valued for her precision and responsibility, but lately, family problems overshadowed everything. Her husband, Alex, a tall, slender man with short, dark hair and a serious expression who worked as a mechanic at an auto service center in downtown Chicago, calmly pondered with a clear head about their son, David. "It would be better if you stayed at my parents' place so you wouldn't have to worry about Mom here," Alex said, looking at Miranda. His voice was even, but concern shone in his eyes for the child, a little 5-year-old boy with curly hair and mischievous eyes who always ran around the apartment with toys. "Why do you always start?" Miranda replied, her voice trembling with resentment as she felt trapped between work and family. "I'm starting. You should ask how I'll manage living with her here for a whole month," she added, referring to her mother-in-law, Teresa, a middle-aged woman with gray streaks in her hair, a strict posture, and a piercing gaze who always found a reason to criticize. "Do I have to check everything with you?" Alex retorted, his brows furrowing, showing irritation. "Don't you realize she's trying to drive us apart?" Miranda continued, her heart pounding at the thought of constant conflicts. "And you think the problem is only with my mom?" he asked, standing up, his muscles tensing from restrained anger. Suddenly, David burst into the room with one slipper on his foot, his cheeks flushed from play. "I'm already ready to go," he exclaimed cheerfully. "Didn't you notice my other slipper?" the boy asked his mom, seeking support. "What's the matter, or is something already setting you off?" Miranda asked, trying to calm her son, but her thoughts were occupied with family issues. "Did you see it? Cool, right?" David showed his new toy, which Grandma had bought. "At least Mom walks with you sometimes," Alex added, trying to smooth things over, but his voice sounded reproachful. "Yeah, we don't always manage everything," Miranda sighed, feeling guilty for her tight schedule. "You know, I work a lot, and I really don't have much time," she explained, her eyes filling with tears from exhaustion. "Someone has to earn money for us," Alex added, sitting back down, his shoulders slumping in helplessness. Recently, Miranda and her husband Alex lived in complete harmony. Their small apartment in the Chicago suburbs was filled with laughter and warmth, where in the evenings they played with David, reading him fairy tales before bed. But lately, conflicts between them flared up every day as if an invisible force was igniting the fire of misunderstandings. Each day brought new quarrels, filled with reproaches and misunderstandings that accumulated like a snowball, threatening to bury everything good under it. The young wife blamed her mother-in-law for everything. She didn't accept her and constantly whispered to her son about her, trying to undermine trust in the family. Her words were like poison that slowly poisoned the atmosphere. Teresa, a woman with a strong character, grew up in a small town in Illinois, accustomed to a strict life, and now having come to Chicago, she felt out of place, so she poured her irritation onto her daughter-in-law. Moreover, Alex's mother arrived from the suburbs under the pretext of a medical checkup and intended to settle in her son's family for a whole month, which only sharpened the situation. Her suitcase with things stood in the hallway, reminding of the unwanted presence. Miranda was convinced that her mother-in-law had orchestrated all this to break their relationship with Alex, as her dislike was evident from the first day when she saw her daughter-in-law and grimaced as if she had seen something unpleasant. Wanting to save the marriage that was cracking at the seams, the young woman turned to Madame Clara for help. Known for her wisdom and knowledge in mystical matters, a woman in her middle age with neatly pinned hair in a bun streaked with gray, dressed in a white linen blouse, who lived in a cozy little house on the outskirts of Chicago, surrounded by herbs and flowers. In Madame Clara's cozy living room, where the air smelled of dried herbs, Miranda sat at the table and began to tell her story. "My mother-in-law disliked me from the first glance. She claimed I was a witch because guys swarmed around me and it irritated her, as if I was stealing attention from her son. But I love only mine and my feelings are sincere and deep." Madame Clara nodded, listening attentively. "We didn't used to argue with my husband often, but lately it's like someone cast a spell. Every little thing turns into a storm. Evening talks turned into shouts and mornings into silence. When his mom came to stay, it's probably heading straight to breakup. Her presence poisons the atmosphere in the house. Her constant remarks about the household make me miserable. Yes, your relationship is on the edge of the abyss right now, and if you don't intervene, everything could fall apart forever, Madame Clara said, her voice quiet and soothing, like the rustle of leaves. So what should I do? I'm sure she's plotting something against us. Her looks are full of malice and suspicion, Miranda asked, clenching her fists. Do you have any item that belonged to that woman? Madame Clara inquired, mixing herbs in a bowl. No, she's afraid to give me anything of hers, as if I could use it against her. Miranda recalled how her mother-in-law hid her things. Then good. Kate, bring me the pouch of salt, Madame Clara called her assistant, a young girl with red hair who quickly brought a small cloth bag of salt. You can't bring trouble upon a person if the truth is unknown, because it might turn against you, the seer warned. But Miranda was confident in her rightness. It's all clear anyway. You've heard how she talks to me. Her words are like knives, Miranda complained. Madame Clara performed the ritual. Herbs grew under the rain that we mixed with salt will reveal the lie, uncover the secrets hiding in the shadows. Her hands were confident despite the gray in her hair. Here, take this pouch and place it at home where your whole family gathers together and bring it back to me in 3 days. Then we'll find out who's right and who's not, and the truth will come to light, she explained, handing the pouch to Miranda, who felt warmth from it in her hands. Good, thank you, Miranda said, hugging Madame Clara, her heart filled with hope. From Madame Clara, Miranda still had to hurry to work, as the day was packed with tasks that couldn't wait. She got on the bus, looking out the window at the passing streets of Chicago. That same day, she returned home late, tired from a long workday filled with calculations and meetings. Her legs ached from walking in high-heeled shoes. Stepping over the threshold of the apartment, the woman heard her husband arguing with his mother about her at the table. Their voices sounded tense, like a taut string, the kitchen filled with the smell of buckwheat porridge cooked by her mother-in-law. I'm just thinking, what kind of normal woman drags out at work so long, forgetting about family and duties at home? Teresa said, her face red with indignation. What kind of business? And you only run away from home as if something's chasing you out, she added, stirring the porridge. And I've been telling you for a long time that her priorities aren't with the family, she said to her son, who nodded. Suddenly, David ran into the kitchen. Yay, Mom came! He exclaimed, throwing himself at Miranda, his little arms hugging her legs. Mom, can I skip eating? Grandma and Dad cooked their porridge and I don't like it at all, he complained, wrinkling his nose. And you know his Grutko can't stand it because it's so boring and tasteless. Miranda supported her son, stroking his head. What kind of normal mom would let a child not eat porridge, which is the basis of healthy nutrition? Teresa was outraged, her eyes gleaming with triumph. That crazy one, when she was little, ate porridge every day. Her parents raised her healthy, and it gave her strength for life, she added, recalling her childhood. Good evening to you, Teresa, Miranda greeted, trying to be polite, but her voice trembled. You dragged on so long at work today, as if it's more important than home, the mother-in-law reproached. Yes, I was preparing the financial report, the numbers didn't add up, and I had to recalculate everything from scratch. Skilled specialists always make the numbers match without issues. It was always like that with me because I was responsible, Teresa boasted. Will you have dinner? She asked. And what should she have for dinner? Let her eat what she tasted at work if she sits there so long, she added sarcastically. No, thank you, I'm not hungry, Miranda replied, feeling her appetite vanish from the tension. Miranda didn't plan to react to her mother-in-law's tricks and wanted to uncover her intentions as quickly as possible, feeling that time was against her. Her mind was occupied with the plan for the pouch from Madame Clara. That night, she dared to act as the seer advised, her heart pounding with excitement and fear. The apartment was quiet, only Alex's snoring sounded from the room. Waiting until everyone fell asleep, the young wife decided to hide the enchanted pouch in the kitchen, because that's where the family gathered at the table to discuss the day. The kitchen cabinets were old, with peeling paint. Thinking where to hide the pouch best, Miranda decided to place it on top of the kitchen cabinet, where no one but her would look, as it was a high spot inaccessible to others.
She stood on a chair, reaching out her hand, and felt relief when the pouch was in place, hoping that in 3 days, everything would become clear.
The next morning, Miranda missed the alarm clock, so she got up later than usual, feeling tired from a sleepless night, her head aching from thoughts of yesterday's events. She was surprised to come out to the kitchen and catch her mother-in-law rummaging through the cabinets in search of something. Her movements were nervous and suspicious, as if she was hiding or looking for something. Teresa, dressed in an old floral robe, turned sharply, her face expressing displeasure. "Good morning," Miranda greeted, trying to sound calm. "Wait, finally she's awake and the child coughed all night. I wanted to make him at least some herbal tea because the cough sounded so threatening, like something serious is starting," the mother-in-law complained, her voice piercing. "Strange. I didn't hear anything because I slept soundly after a hard day," Miranda wondered, surveying the kitchen where cups from last night's dinner stood on the table. "How could you hear? I think if he coughed hard, you wouldn't notice because you're always busy with your own things," Teresa reproached, closing the cabinet. Suddenly, David ran into the kitchen barefoot, his hair tousled from sleep. "Good morning, Mommy," he said, hugging Miranda. "Good morning, Grandma," he added, turning to Teresa. "The child is sick and barefoot, walking on the cold floor. That's dangerous," the mother-in-law was indignant, picking up the boy. "And tomorrow you'll end up in the clinic with inflammation, and who will be the blame then?" she asked rhetorically. "Nothing serious. David is completely healthy, and we're not afraid to walk barefoot because the floor is worn from the heating," Miranda objected, taking her son in her arms. At that moment, Alex entered the kitchen, his face sleepy but concerned. "Good morning," he greeted. "What, something happened again?" he asked, seeing the tension. "We have trouble with David," Teresa explained. "What's with him?" the father worried. "He coughed all night, maybe pneumonia already, so stay home with him today. Don't risk the child's health," the mother-in-law insisted, her eyes gleaming with concern, mixed with manipulation. "No, I have a medical checkup today that I can't miss," Miranda said to Alex. "And you could stay at least one day, spend time with the little one, show maternal care," Teresa addressed Miranda. "You know, Mom is right. Better he stays home today to avoid complications," Alex supported, his voice sounding convincing. "But he's not," Miranda began but stopped. "You could say you know better, as if we're making it up," the husband added. "We're not late. I'll text the teachers on the way," he said, taking his keys and briefcase. "Yay!" David exclaimed, happy to stay home. Miranda was convinced that David was healthy, but her mother-in-law and Alex so stubbornly proved the opposite that she couldn't object, feeling pressure from all sides. Her heart squeezed from injustice. The woman had to call work and take the day off, though it disrupted her plans. She sat on the sofa, holding the phone, and felt guilty. Miranda's boss, Harry, a middle-aged man with gray at the temples and a charming smile, went along with it, but that day was the deadline for the grant application, and without Miranda's signature as chief accountant, it was impossible, putting the important project at risk. So Harry offered to bring the papers personally home, showing his care. He arrived in his car and knocked on the door. "Good day," he greeted. "So this guy who wanted to ruin my grant because of his illness," he joked, looking at David. "Here, hold this so he gets better and lets Mom go to work, because without you, everything stands still there," he added, handing over a toy. "And what do you say?" "Thank you," David replied with a smile. "Sorry to distract you from the child, but I'd like you to check the documents carefully again because they're critical," the boss said, sitting at the table. "Of course. Maybe some tea you brewed yourself?" Miranda offered, trying to be hospitable. "How can I refuse such an offer?" he smiled, his eyes lingering on her longer than necessary. Miranda noticed that her boss showed sympathy towards her. His looks were warm and meaningful, but she didn't tell her husband about it to avoid losing her job because of his jealousy, which could flare up instantly. She felt uncomfortable under his attention. She herself ignored his flattery and hints, trying to keep distance, focusing on work. However, the mother-in-law, who quietly returned from the clinic, saw the boss's visit as an opportunity to accuse her daughter-in-law of infidelity. Her eyes gleamed with triumph as she stood in the doorway, eavesdropping. "I knew it. As soon as we're out of the house, she's up to her tricks, inviting strange men," she whispered to herself. "It's a pity Alex doesn't see this because he blindly trusts her," she added, entering the room. "It's Harry, my boss. He brought documents for signature. Nothing suspicious," Miranda justified, blushing. "David," she mocked. "Mom," David said, looking at his grandma. "And I already ate everything. Maybe Uncle will bring something tasty," he added innocently.
"Well, now it's all clear. The puzzle is complete," the mother-in-law declared. "Miranda, thank you. I hope you return to work soon. I don't want to look for a replacement because you're irreplaceable," Harry said, standing up. "Have a good day." "So what? What she did? Where do I find a new job now? Wasn't I a good employee?" "They don't value that. They value other merits," Teresa remarked sarcastically. "David, come on," she called the boy. When Alex returned home, Teresa immediately retold everything as she understood it, adding her interpretations and exaggerations. Her story was emotional with gestures. So in the evening, the husband arranged a real interrogation for his wife. His voice trembled with anger as he paced the room back and forth. "So how do you explain this?" he asked. "How to explain that I didn't get fired from work, but the boss's visit home looks so suspicious?" "Well, your mom invited him under some weird pretext, as if it was all planned," Miranda objected. "You trust her more than me," she added indignantly. "And I'd like to believe you more, but you're never home, and that raises doubts," he sighed, sitting on the sofa. The next day, Miranda returned from work earlier and saw an unusual scene in the kitchen that shocked her to the core. The air was filled with the smell of herbs. "Yay, Mom came!" David exclaimed, throwing himself at Miranda. "Hi, Sunshine, what's going on here?" she asked, looking at the scattered herbs. "We were driving out evil spirits with Grandma, doing a ritual with herbs and prayers," David explained proudly. "Imagine, they said some witch was wandering here, ruining everything around," Teresa added with triumph. "Really? Interesting. And you know your favorite cartoons are on now, so what kind of witch came?" Miranda asked, trying to hide her anxiety. "Well, she's still here, the witch, and we exposed her," the mother-in-law declared, holding the found pouch in her hands. "I've heard this tune before, but now I have proof that can't be refuted," she shouted, waving the pouch. "Give it back what you didn't give. Now I'll show all this to Alex and let him finally see who he's married to, who he lives with, and what secrets are hidden. After this, he'll dump you in a flash, and that's exactly what we want, to put everything back in its place. That's why you came here, to break our family," Miranda accused, feeling her heart tighten. "And if it goes on like this, you won't wriggle out now, so remember the consequences," Teresa said, but suddenly clutched her heart, her face paling. They called an ambulance. Teresa was taken to the clinic, and Miranda worried terribly about that because she didn't want to harm her mother-in-law, despite everything, as she was part of the family. Her hands trembled when she called the hospital. However, she couldn't let her destroy the marriage that was everything to her. She sat in the room thinking about the next steps.
So the next day, the woman took her son to kindergarten and drove to Madame Clara, her heart pounding with anxiety. The road seemed long, houses and trees of Chicago passing by the window. Now the mother-in-law is in the clinic? Alex is there with her? I'm guilty of everything again, Miranda complained, entering Madame Clara's little house. I wanted the best, but the pouch probably worked not as planned, she explained, sitting at the table. Madame Clara nodded, her eyes wise, and her white linen blouse emphasizing her calm confidence. Your mother-in-law really doesn't accept you. She didn't want your union from the start. Her dislike is rooted in the past, the seer said. See, I told you the truth, Miranda nodded. She didn't do anything bad about that. The problem isn't in her, Madame Clara soothed. She's a woman with temperament, but she doesn't wish you harm intentionally. It's just her character. Then, why are we arguing with my husband so much? Everything is falling apart before our eyes here, and it's a pity for the little one. He hears the scandals that traumatize his soul, Miranda asked, her voice trembling. Madame Clara took David's toy that Miranda had brought. You have your son's toy. Give it to me. Not finishing? She asked, examining the toy. And your son sometimes walks in one boot or one sock. That's a bad omen. With the husband, there's such a sign. Shoes separate parents, leading to discord, the seer added. Separate? Then everything will stick together for you when you teach your son to wear everything in pairs, and it will become a habit. Yes, it really happens often in families. I've seen many cases. Madame Clara nodded. But is that all? See, he's just starting to dress himself. We need to be more careful to avoid such little things, Miranda said. But it's not just about the sign. You yourselves don't perceive each other, don't want to fix the relationship. Think each is right, and that creates a wall between you, Madame Clara explained. If you change that, everything will settle for you and harmony will return. I understand all that, but he won't even listen to my words, Miranda sighed. And are you perceiving me now? If you want to save the marriage, watch so the child doesn't walk in shoes or socks without a pair, and talk to your husband. Listen to him sincerely. It all depends on you. Your initiative can change everything, Madame Clara advised, hugging her daughter-in-law. Her graying strands in the bun slightly tousled from the movement. From Madame Clara, Miranda immediately rushed to the clinic to learn about her mother-in-law's condition and apologized to her as her conscience tormented her. The hospital corridors were filled with disinfectant. But Teresa demonstratively refused to talk to her daughter-in-law, insisting that she was to blame for her illness. Her words were full of resentment as she lay in bed, pale. "You had better go home now or we'll argue even more," Alex said, his face gloomy as he stood by his mother. "Will you come today or not? I don't know. Will it make Mom feel better?" added. Miranda drove home, hoping she could calmly talk to Alex when he cooled down and find common ground. But near the entrance, an unexpected event awaited her that added fuel to the fire. "I suggest we go celebrate the success," Harry said, waiting by the entrance. "Sorry, but I can't right now because of problems at home," Miranda objected. "But I need you for the team." "Harry, are we already celebrating with colleagues? By the way, everyone was waiting for you," the boss added. "But lately you've rarely shown up at work. You said you're at home." "But I can work remotely to keep up," she replied. The boss's behavior finally knocked Miranda off track because, amid all the troubles, she couldn't afford to lose her job, which was a source of stability. The woman felt hurt by what was happening in her life, tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't even immediately notice that hurrying home, she had lost her mobile phone, panicking as she searched her bag. "Is this what you're looking for? Here, take it," Harry said, handing the phone to Miranda. "Why are you scared? I'm not offending you." Suddenly, Alex approached. He was just returning home and saw everything. "So how do you explain this now?" he asked Miranda angrily. "Sorry, I was just returning your wife's phone that she left in my car." "No one asked your opinion!" Alex shouted, pushing the boss away and grabbing Miranda by the hand. Miranda fell into despair, realizing that after his mother's suspicions, Alex had misinterpreted everything and now wouldn't even want to hear her explanations. Trust was undermined, and she cried in the room. The next day, Miranda kept trying to call her husband, but he ignored the calls as if walled off. And when she came to the clinic, they didn't let her in, which only intensified the despair. The woman was so preoccupied with her worries that she completely forgot Madame Clara's advice about socks and David's shoes. Little things accumulated. Suddenly, the kindergarten teacher called. "Miranda, your son came to kindergarten with one sock. Where is the other? He played in the sand all day in one slipper, and it's inconvenient." "Oh, sorry, I didn't notice," Miranda apologized, blushing with shame. When she picked David home, he explained himself. "Grandma soaked it at home in the morning, remember, Mom? I told you, but you didn't hear." "No, I don't remember." "And did the teacher scold?" Miranda asked, feeling guilty. "Yes, she noticed and grumbled all day, and I wanted to play in my own shoes," David complained. Suddenly, Miranda's husband called and said he had thought it all over and understood that he and Miranda really needed to separate because it couldn't go on like this. "Tomorrow morning, I'll stop by for the papers to file for divorce," Alex stated coldly. The woman was in despair, realizing she hadn't looked after her son and hadn't followed any of Madame Clara's advice. She was afraid it was all hopeless now. So Miranda drove to Madame Clara again. "Alex wants to divorce me. He suspected me of cheating and won't listen to my explanations," she told the seer, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Calm down," Madame Clara said, placing a hand on Miranda's shoulder. "Kate, bring me that herbal blend for reconciliation, the enchanted one," she asked her assistant. "Here, Madame, the blend you asked for," Kate replied, handing over a bowl of herbs. Madame Clara took the bowl and continued. There's so much unspoken and unheard between you, misunderstandings that have built up over years. Your husband doesn't want to hear the truth because you yourself haven't learned to perceive him, and you overlook the sun again, letting little things destroy. I know that, but how to convince him when everything gets twisted in his head? Miranda asked. Brew this decoction and invite Alex home for tea. Talk everything calmly without emotions, Madame Clara advised. If you can listen to each other without reproaches and judgments, everything will stick together for you and the family will become stronger. Thank you, I'll try, though hope is fading, Miranda said, hugging the seer. Miranda strongly doubted that her husband, convinced of her infidelity, would agree to a sincere conversation, but decided to risk it since there was nothing to lose. She called him. On the way home, she called Alex. Luckily, he answered and agreed to meet, though his voice was cold. The woman brewed Madame Clara's decoction and, relying on its magic, finally dared to start the conversation, her heart beating wildly, the kitchen cozy under the evening light. Is Mom better already? Miranda asked. They'll discharge her soon and she'll go home so she doesn't interfere, Alex replied. She's still angry at me. Well, what do you think? Her character isn't Honey, of course, but she's my mom, and you could have endured her whims a little bit. You could have stood by my side at least once, supported me. It was so cozy then. It was. When you're never home, you forgot that life is not just work, but also family that needs attention, he reproached. Miranda wanted to argue with her husband as usual, but remembering Madame Clara's words, she decided to stay silent and finally listen to him to the end, letting the emotions subside. I thought about what I wanted to tell you. You've become so distant, always irritated. You can't say a word without 1,000 accumulations in response, as if I'm the enemy. Yes, you're right. I admit my mistakes. Well, I'm not perfect either. I earn less, and I don't give flowers often, but it's hard without you, your support. You know I love only you, and I can't even be with someone else. I've forgotten everything. You're the best for me. And what about your boss? The boss climbs into every skirt. There's nothing between us and never will be. So you don't suspect? I'm ready to change jobs, start from a clean slate, she offered. For that, everything should always be in pairs, like everything in life, Alex agreed, hugging his wife. After the reconciliation, Alex no longer allowed his mother to interfere in their family life, setting clear boundaries. He talked to her about it calmly. And Miranda really quit her job but soon found a new one that allowed more time with the family. Her new office was closer to home in Chicago. With her husband, they began to communicate more and listen to each other, building trust step by step. In the evenings, they walked with David in the park. Together, the parents taught David to always put on socks in pairs and wear both boots, turning it into a fun game. The boy laughed, repeating the rule. Madame Clara reminds, watch so children don't walk in one boot or one sock, because it can lead to parents' breakup, and little things often hide big problems. Her words became the family motto.